Hello, and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 40. That's a big number. It's a round number. It ends in a 0. Congratulations on 40 episodes.
Yeah, we've been doing this 40 times, so yeah, we'll keep going.
It's become just automatic for me. This is just like a thing that
Yeah.
I do now. I record a podcast. No big deal. We have a thing to celebrate that involves the both of us. The thing we talked about last time of getting the attaboy thing up. This happens very rarely. It happened exactly as I said it would. I was like, I could probably whip this together in a couple hours after this podcast. And then I did. Looking back at my time log, it took me exactly 1 hour and 19 minutes. From soup to nuts. From like, I'm sitting down, starting working on this thing, to I have handed it over to you and given you access to the GitHub thing so you can add your own cloud function. And I've made the fav icon for it, and I've added some cards for social media sharing, and I've tweeted about it with the clipped out video for some marketing. Hour and 19 minutes to start a new thing. My gosh, if I do something in this category of work like 100 times, I can't imagine what's going to happen. I don't know if this thing in particular is going to be successful, but like good practice, getting the reps in, and it feels kind of good to be like, I have done this part of the scaffolding and the part that I can do sort of automatically. And now I'm handing it to you for the interesting part, the way I coded it. I just like respond to whatever the person said with, I quote what they said and then say attaboy, which is horribly boring. Then the ball is now in your court. What's the plan? What are we doing?
That's right. So I started thinking about how I was going to do this and immediately ran into a few problems. And so these are interesting. The way AI gets developed right now is you train it on GPUs, and then you can do inference on GPUs or on CPUs. The problem is that these language models are so big that if I were to do it on a CPU, it would take 30 seconds to a minute probably to respond with something custom, which would be okay for a background task, which adds more complexity. So my array of options right now are do it on a CPU as a background task, do it on a GPU, but then it costs like a lot of money, like $1 per hour to run the servers, which turns into a lot of money. Use GPT-3, which is we could totally do. That would cost about, I could probably do it for a penny per response, which is not zero, but not that expensive, right? Or we could pre-generate like a list of say 100 or 1,000, responses, and then put those in a big array and then pick a random one, basically. So those are all the different ways I might do it. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts about any of those.
I would love to point out the irony of the fact that it costs a penny per response. It's literally a penny for your thoughts, whatever the language model is.
I suppose so.
For starting out, it sounds like it's going to make the most sense to just generate. You said 100,000, I think. I don't think we.
I said 100 or 1,000.
Oh, 100 or 1,000. Yeah, like 100, just like good job iterations that say that in different ways. And then we put that in an array and just have it in memory, and then pick a random one.
Yeah.
That's close to what I was going to do originally, but it'll be fun to be like, it's AI, and it was AI from the beginning. Like these are responses that you're getting from this bot. This is not necessarily something that Chris or I wrote explicitly. And then it sounds like it's going to make the most sense to just do it through GPT-3. And then potentially GPT-3 could be giving more custom responses. Well, but then if we're doing that, why not jump to that initially? Why not just do GPT right now?
Because I haven't done it before, so I don't know all the ins and outs of interacting with it. I have an account, and I know there is an API, and that is as far as I've gotten with using it. So, yeah,
I think that's the way to go too, because I could see this being interesting to people if we like publish it on Indie Hacker or something, and be like, it uses GPT-3, like we'll instantly get 1 million upvotes because people love GPT-3 things. If that seems feasible, my understanding of it is it's just an API call. You have an API key and call out the service and have some templated format of like, okay, this was the input text. I cleaned my dishes, and then the example output text is good job cleaning your dishes. And then the example input text number 2 is whatever the person says. Your example output text is blank, and then you take that blank and respond to it in the message. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. That seems like it'd be the most straightforward, and GPT-3 is like in your wheelhouse of things to get comfortable with. It seems like this is a good place to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then I can say I've done something with it instead of just played around with it. So yeah, sure, I can try to do that this week. That'd be fun.
Neat. How exciting. Also, very exciting to me that, like, I've set this up in a way where I won't need to do anything. It works. I have my basic templating thing that, like, does a response, and if it's just an API call, that'll be super straightforward. Oh, one thing so that we don't have your private key, I'll give you access to the next project also, and then you can have a place to edit the environment variables. Yeah, okay. But then you, I won't need to do anything, and it'll just get pushed. Thank you once again to listener. Oh my gosh, I forgot where I wrote his name down. I'm sorry. Jonas Larson for tweeting us, being like, "Hey, where's this thing? It seems like you guys could push this out," and we can. And I'm curious how much time you spend on this of like connecting up the API. I challenge you to spend less than an hour and 19 minutes on it. That'd be really cool to brag that like we launched this thing in no time.
Yeah, I think the hardest part might be figuring out how to set up your project and get the environment variables working and deploying. Like that'll probably take a half an hour just to do that.
Yeah.
So
getting familiar with the environment. The way I set it up, I'm in love with Vercel from the people who make the Next.js framework, because they just make it so trivially easy. It's the best platform I've ever seen to deploy on. It feels like Heroku is nice, but Heroku is incredibly expensive. This is cheap, and it feels like they designed the framework with the deployment environment in mind, and just everything makes sense, and it's super easy, and you just connect your GitHub account, and then anytime you push, it has the automatic CI integration. Oh, what does CI stand for? Something...
Continuous integration.
Continuous integration. I said CI integration, and that was saying integration
it's
twice.
Like a pin. It's like a pin number.
Yes,
or
an
ATM machine.
Yeah. They have the continuous integration so that you just push and it flows through the pipeline and gets instantly deployed. It's so nice. In the last 2 weeks, I think I've set up something like 5 projects in this framework of like, it's running on Next, it has React in the framework, it's using Tailwind for styling, it's deployed on Vercel, I have the domain name through Google Domains, and every piece of it just slots together so well. The backend is in Firebase, the authentication is in Firebase, and I feel like I can get up to the point of like having an actually useful thing where I'm writing novel code quicker than I ever have been in my life. So, do you use Vercel? Is this?
So I haven't used Vercel before, but I've used Netlify, which is very, very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff. You deploy to GitHub and it automatically pushes, and you can use your own backend, or they have these cloud functions. Yeah,
cool. It's a very fun time to be a web developer. This stuff is just getting easier and easier every year. Cool. What else did you get up to this last week? What else are you thinking about?
I had an interesting conversation with Jesse Anderson, who
we've talked Jesse.
To. That's right. We talked to on this podcast before. He's writing a book about ADHD and focus. And he said on Twitter that all of these AI tools are coming out, GPT-3 and all of these, and it would be really neat if he had like a writing assistant or writing buddy for different tasks. And there are several that exist, but most of them are either focused on fiction. GPT is especially good at fiction because of the way it's trained and stuff. So either fiction or like pumping out as many blog posts as possible. So it's like, we will replace you as a writer, we will use this AI to write these blog posts for you. And very few, if any, are really focused on someone who might be writing a nonfiction book, like a long form book. And so we had a neat conversation about the things he might like to see, and I don't know if I'm going to do anything with it yet, but I certainly could. Yeah. So what's your hot take on an AI writing buddy for long form nonfiction?
I have several thoughts. This slots perfectly in how I see AI development going. How the development of it seems to be like, first, humans can blow the computers out of the water, and it's sort of commonly accepted that humans will never be able to do this as well as computers will never be able to do this as well as humans can, and this marks part of our humanity, that we are good at chess, or we are good at Go, or we are good at StarCraft. And then computers start doing kind of okay. It's passable, and they sort of start passing the Turing test of like, it wrote something that's interesting that, an elementary student couldn't do. This is still a toy, and this isn't going to actually happen. And then after some development, it gets to the point where the best people at that task are pretty good humans who are able to use the technology as a tool. So if, the best chess players for a while were humans who had some intuitive sense of the long-term planning of chess, and they could use this chess engine to be able to make sure that they weren't going to make a grave mistake or like highlight, this is your highest probability choice. And then, of course, it replaces the task completely. So I think what Jesse's bumping into now is like, we are not yet there with writing. The completely automated writing tools that just say, I'll generate a blog post for you based on this title, are bad. It's sort of... It's been very interesting to me reading those, because if you're not paying attention, if you're kind of like zoned out, you don't really notice. It's like, okay, this makes sense on the level of the sentence, but it's not going anywhere. It feels almost like a human intelligence test. Like, can you tell that this was
right.
that this is not actually saying anything? So it from a meta level, a sort of a tool that is aiding you in writing, that's like pointing things out to you, or maybe expanding a bullet point of yours into a paragraph, and then you clean it up a little bit. Like that sort of a tool seems to make sense in where we are developmentally with automatically writing in AI right now. So I think that's it seems like now is the time is right for a tool like this. My second thought is, I would love some way of taking a Zettelkasten system, which I've been obsessed with over this last year. The basic idea is that anytime you have a thought, either while you're reading a piece of media or just out for a walk, you note it down in a structured way where you can sort of like write a book a drip at a time. You can just, if you have some system of capturing these thoughts in a way that's linking them together, when you actually sit down to write the piece, instead of having to come up with all your ideas from scratch, you just say, hey, show me all of my drips of thoughts and ideas about skiing. And then you have every tagged note you've ever had, every thought that you've ever thought was worth writing down about skiing. And then the process of writing is not coming up with things on the fly. It's just like editing them and putting them together in a more cohesive manner. So what I would be most curious about in a nonfiction writing tool like this, Zettelkastens are designed for nonfiction writing. It's supposed to be a tool for that. I would be so curious if there was a AI that was Zettelkasten aware, and I'm not even sure what this would look like, but I would love to give a system like my body of all of my notes and journal entries and notes that I've taken on blog posts and YouTube videos, and say, hey, here is everything that I've dumped into my exobrain. Talk back to me as if you have some intelligence. And when I start typing, I want to write about goldfish, I want you to remind me, oh, hey, you wrote about goldfish because, when you're watching Ted Lasso, they had the whole thing about goldfish, and here's this theme. And I don't know what it would do next. Maybe it's like, here's an example paragraph of a thing that you could write, and it's in your style. And I'm also not familiar with like what is technically feasible right now. Like I know what GPT-3 is, but I'm not quite sure how I would take my Zettelkasten and put it into GPT-3. Like I couldn't load that into memory. What I might be describing is just like, use the Zettelkasten the way it should be designed. That might be a solution to Jesse as a nonfiction writing tool. But I feel like AI could play in that somehow. Do you see an obvious way to put AI in there, or is that unnecessary if you have the Zettelkasten system already?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with that, so I'll have to look that up. But generally, there are several techniques, not just GPT-3, that could be helpful there. One is, like, you have all of these different thoughts, and so you could group them. You could do something called embeddings. So embeddings is like taking a bit of text and spitting out an array of numbers, a fixed array of numbers that represents kind of the idea behind that text.
Cool.
And so you can embed multiple. You can embed pictures, and you can embed all sorts of stuff. But so you can get embeddings for things, and then you could like group them that way. So that'd be kind of interesting. So you could say like, here's all my notes about whatever, where else did I say goldfish, or where else was I talking about, that, and then you may not have actually said that word, but you could sort of search all of your things for a similar idea to something. So that's sort of one thing you might be able to do. Another is, so Jesse and I talked about this, how one writing technique is you sort of have the points and then you just sort of ramble on a note, like you speak, right? And then later you go back and turn that into like the text that you want. And so that's similar. And so, what he wanted is something that would take his sort of rambling voice and turn it into text that made more sense. So like summarize and, make bullet points out of things. And so that's similar to what you just said, like take all of these disparate thoughts and sort of turn them into a cohesive narrative. So that's interesting. So I think there is a lot there. What I was trying to figure out though is what could I plausibly deliver to someone that would be useful. What's the minimum viable product basically for this. And that's what I'm not 100% sure about, but I think there is a lot of interesting stuff there.
I love the idea of embedding. I didn't know that was a thing you could do, that you could take a sentence and extract the abstract idea from that. In Ted Lasso, the analogy of goldfish is brought up to describe this concept of not to get hung up on your losses and to have the memory of a goldfish. So like just keep trying and forget your history of that you've failed in the past, and that's going to help you go forward. So if there was a AI linking system that could abstract that idea and then apply it somewhere else in some other note that I took that had nothing to do with goldfish, like had nothing to do with Ted Lasso, I wouldn't have made the connection if the computer hadn't. That's fun. That's the computer making more connections. Like, my gosh, that's helping me think. That's seems like it's an external brain. That's wild. But that depends on having this Zettelkasten system in place already, which is becoming more popular. But it's and I think if you were going to deploy this as a product, maybe you integrate with Roam Research, which is like a popular web-based tool for this type of system. But the easiest thing that's jumping out to me is taking rambling notes and consolidating them into summarized, clearer text. I like that a lot. And that seems like a very straightforward problem. I've seen demos of GPT-3 where it's able to summarize text, and I've seen text summarizers years ago, I think like a decade and a half ago. There's a product called Sumly that was sold to Yahoo by this like 17-year-old kid that could take articles and summarize them automatically. That feels valuable. If I can just like a process that I love doing is just going for a walk and spewing nonsense, and like any thought that comes in my head, I'm just doing stream of consciousness, like a morning pages style journaling. And I've got my AirPods in, so hopefully when people walk past me, they think I'm on a phone call or something. But I'm just talking to myself. And then at the end of that, I get this huge. I do text to speech, so it's just stream of consciousness, a whole bunch of text, and 98% of the words are accurate. If I could take that and then get the main ideas from it automatically, or get like a cohesive summary of the thing that I just said, that feels valuable. And I could see the total. So like building an app that does voice recording and transcriptions would be trivial to do. And then if you added to that this secret spicy sauce of, I also summarize for you what you said at the end of it, and give you the three main bullet points. That seems like it could be marketed as like a valuable writing tool. If you can take all that rambling and then spit out, here's the paragraph now that you wrote this morning that you can cut and paste into your book. I think that would depend a lot though on like, can you actually do that? Could you go from the ramblings of just walking to a paragraph that you could write? That seems like the job of a ghostwriter or someone much more intelligent. Does that seem feasible?
It might be technically possible. One thing AI has a hard time with is like long, what's it called, like dependencies, basically, like long-term planning. And so you'd have to sort of have a scaffolding around like, how do you want to structure this, and then have the AI sort of just do bits at a time. But you can also you can absolutely do summaries. So some AI summary with some long-term grouping, planning, kind of separate AI, and then expand that into sort of chapters or paragraphs or something. All should be technically possible. Very interesting. The other thing I thought of was there are tools that sort of do this today. But so when we were talking about clipstat marketing for you, you were thinking about going after people who have a lot of video content and want to, split that up. But you could also, if you text to speech it and then put it through an AI, you could generate a whole bunch of tweets that they should tweet out. You could also take a speaker and ingest all their talks and then spit out the book that they should write. Spit out, basically write the book from all their talks, something like that. So there is a lot that probably could be done with existing either video or audio content to make it, valuable for the person. So that'd be
fun to do with the stuff we've been talking about on this podcast. I have transcripts of every word we've said on this podcast that I'm doing. Like I can send you text documents of that. If you can turn that into a book, cool.
Spit out a book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. All that's very interesting. Generating some of that seems very difficult, but interesting anyway. Yeah.
Does an application there jump out to you as something that you think would be worthwhile and easy to implement?
Easy to implement, maybe not. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like what is the thing that I know I could do, and is not crazy expensive to run, because remember all these things. Also, like ingesting a whole ton of data and churning through it with these advanced AIs takes a lot of processing power, a lot of processing time. So it'd be very expensive. Yeah, so I'll have to think about that. What's something I know I could do in that vein, and then who might want to use it. Yeah.
For the problem Jesse has right now of wanting assistance in putting together a nonfiction book, the solution to that is a Zettelkasten, and that needs no AI. That's just you take your notes in a slightly different way, where every thought that you have is linked, and then while I'm watching Ted Lasso, I might, if I just did that higher level thinking of like, oh, this is ostensibly about goldfish and how goldfish don't forget and like soccer, but the bigger theme here that I'm more interested in is like perseverance. So I might tag it with perseverance, and then the tag perseverance, I can see across all of my notes how many times have I used this word to tag something. And then if I click on it, I can see, oh, it's these 4 notes across 3 years. Oh, this is a blog post now. I can string these ideas together and turn that into a blog post. And then sort of the modern way of writing nonfiction is you take a bunch of blog posts and you string those together into chapters, and then you string the chapters together into a book, and now you have a book. Right. So for Jesse or anyone else thinking about writing a nonfiction book, I would highly recommend looking into Zettelkastens. They are fundamentally changing in the way that I go about putting together ideas. I feel like my capacity for being able to think about things across time is drastically increased.
That's cool. Yeah, I've heard of Rome Research, but I haven't heard of Zettelkast, so I will have to check that out.
There's a whole fun story about Nicholas Luhmann, the dude who invented them, and he started with just cards. Yeah, he was this German sociologist, and it was just note cards in boxes that were hand-linked, and this was, I think, 100 years ago or something, and the technique has gained a resurgence because it's a very good solution to this problem of just way too much information and then trying to consolidate the information into in a meaningful way. Yeah, they're super cool. What else? You went through some changes recently. You officially started your school. Did you get a first day of school photo with a lunchbox or something?
No, but my wife wanted to, and then we kind of forgot. So maybe we will. But yeah, started school. Part-time master's program. It didn't feel like starting. It felt like watching a bunch of videos online, because that's what it was. So it'll be interesting as I go along how it feels. I feel like I'll be able to do it part-time like I wanted, so that's good. Unless it gets a lot harder, which it might. It's only the first week so far, but yeah, so far I'm already learning stuff, and yeah, I'm excited to do it.
Exciting. You finished your job also with Hidden Door, putting together that demo. How'd that go?
Yeah, that was good. The part that I talked about with AI and long-term dependency and like planning definitely showed its face there, because like it was generating a narrative, right? And AI's generating narrative don't do well unless you put some structure in place. And because I built it in like 2 days, I basically just ignored all of that. And so the stories that came out were pretty hilarious. One was you decide to go get ice cream and then you never come back. So it's like someone walking out, to go buy ice cream and then just doesn't come back.
Sounds like my dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really.
Right. And other things that just don't make any sense. But they were always pretty funny, and the responses it came back with always sort of made sense. Although it also, one thing that an AI recognizes is Markdown, because the way they trained it is by parsing a lot of text online. A lot of it's Markdown, and so at certain points it'll inject a new chapter when you're not asking for chapters, or at one point the action that it suggested was just 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, like it was a list of numbers. So lots of strange things like that, but yeah, it worked, and it was fun, even though it didn't make any sense basically.
Amazing. You called it a dependency problem, that it can't remember?
Oh, I mean, dependency may be the wrong word, but like long-term dependencies, meaning if you die in chapter 1, then you can't be around in chapter 2.
Yes.
So there are events that happen that other events are dependent on, that it forgets, because basically, yeah, it's the AI doesn't have enough memory, like you were talking about, to remember things that far in the past, unless you set up a structure so that it can remember these events. Yeah.
That seems really hard to figure out. In learning more about autonomous cars and how those systems work, my understanding of it is the input to those systems is 2 frames of video. It's this is what the world looked like 1 frame ago, 1/60th of a second ago, and then this is what the world looks like now. What is your action? Do you change the steering wheel? Do you do the gas or the brake? And that's how these cars are driving themselves, which is terrifying. I'm amazed that it could do that just from a single frame of video. And that also makes me feel a little better about like the flickering that you see and how the cars are deciding that what they should do. It's kind of eerie when like a bus moves across the lane or something. Yeah. But if I know that it's only running on 2 frames of video, like, okay, I guess that's fine. How do you approach that problem? How do you get a computer to remember that your character died last chapter? Do you include metadata of the state of the world in every request?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. One, with your car driving example, based on the last Tesla AI day, they actually did solve this 2 different ways. One is they just make the networks bigger, so it can remember more than 2 frames, right? So you are looking at more data. And then the other way they solved it is that's the first part of the network. So they have this giant network that looks at that. They have a whole other second planning network that uses some more advanced techniques like Monte Carlo simulation techniques and stuff. So that's basically, this is how the game of Go was solved for with AI. Basically, you have AI that then drives another machine learning, like long-term planning machine learning framework. So that's how Tesla is doing it right now. For the story bit, you can inject state of the world. So you could keep track of like current characters and the state of them, things like that, and then put those basically at the top of every request, so that the AI has at least some option to look back and see that. You could also be even more hands-on than that. So if you want to be even more in control, you would generate entire non-AI based methods for keeping track of like characters and their state and different nouns and verbs in the world, and then just ask the AI for very specific certain, like say sentences or things that comply with the rules of the world. And that is less of letting the AI generate the entire story and more just letting it generate little bits that conform to the rules that you've already set up. So those are all different ways that you could solve it.
I like the metadata at the top solution. I'm thinking of like for every request that you send to GPT-3, you preface it with like, when we last left off,
something
Sally
like that.
was in the Forgotten Woods and had a sword with her. And from the AI's perspective, like it's only generating the story a paragraph at a time, but you're prompting it like, okay, remember this character's here. That would then create this additional problem though of like you have to be able to interpret the story that it's giving you, of like if it says this person goes here, you have to remember that person went there and then mark that they're there. How fun. Yeah. This is what we're talking about, building a brain. This is so cool. It's like humanity is just collectively teaching a artificial little baby. Neat. We're trying to teach it how to make a story, When I was young, we used to play this game called Your Turn Stories, where my mom would say, like, once upon a time, Batman and Robin were going to fight Mr. Freeze, but they hit something in the road, and it was your turn. And then I would say, a giant ice cream cone. And, like, that's what we're doing. But we're doing that with a computer. Neat. And potentially horrifying, but mostly neat. In this moment, I feel like it's neat. What of those two solutions, how did you choose to address them in Hidden Door?
Well, for my demo or what they're doing? Because for my demo, I ignored it all.
Okay.
I had 2 days.
Much easier.
Yeah. And so one thing I did try to do is, so we talked about summarization. So say you have, a very long story. You could summarize it into 2 sentences, put that at the top, and then generate from there. And so basically you continuously summarize your story. I tried that, and it did not work like I thought it would in 2 days, and so I abandoned that. But that should work probably if you did it that way.
That's a clever solution. That fixes the problem I was saying of, like, how do you interpret what just happened? Yeah, summaries would work.
Yeah. But if you want to do it like as a system, without talking too much about what Hidden Door is doing, they are more hands-on with their approach of making sure it doesn't generate crazy things, because they want they also want to be able to direct useful, like, plot arcs and character arcs, and so that you just can't really do with AI right now. So there has to be a mechanism to generate the plot arc and then have the AI basically fill in the gaps.
Cool. Makes sense. Still in that in-between state of, like, working with humans and computers and putting boundaries on where the computer can go, and then eventually, this AI is going to be the best fiction writer that there is. There will be no human that can compete with it. How exciting. Oh. You're at the forefront of this technology. You're making the thing to be able to do this. Neat. I have 2 things I would like your feedback on. I'll start with a more controversial one, because I would like to do something that goes against common wisdom. And right. It seems like a good idea to me, but it seems like it shouldn't be a good idea at the same time. I'm thinking of making Clipstart Marketing freemium. Freemium is usually a terrible idea, especially for bootstrap founders, because it's not worth it. You get a bunch of people who are trying to use it for free. They complain the most. They complain the loudest. They're not paying you any money. People, when they're getting something for free, are surprisingly pathological. And the easiest customer to have is one that's paying you $1,000 a month. Like, they send you the least emails. They're the happiest with the product. Also more support, also more server costs. Like, freemium's usually a bad way to go. Here's why I think it might be a good idea. About a third of the people who have signed up for my email list so far seem to be in this camp of being super fans of podcasts, and they're interested in this tool because they just love their niche of podcasts. They love their podcasters, and they want to be posting on their own social media clips from the podcast that they listen to. And then another third is, like, the people who I think I actually want, who would actually be paying me money, of people who are content producers, who have a fair amount of audience, who have sponsors and have money and have a way of making money and don't mind spending money on this thing. And then maybe another third are sort of, like, aspirationally wanting to be in that second group, where they don't really have a video content strategy yet, but they would like to get there, and they're looking at this as, like, oh, this could fit into my eventual theoretical pipeline. Whereas that second group, like, pretty often they'll say something like, oh man, I have paid so much money for exactly this thing, and if you have a tool that does it, great. I'm comparing this to paying $9,000 a month, so you can charge me whatever you want. I, as a person, don't like marketing. It confuses me. Paid ads are still something I'm, like, getting my mind around. I don't like the idea that I could just have an ad sitting there that's burning money. It's something I'd like to get better at, but that's not my strength. I don't feel like I'm a strong marketer. I can write a landing page. I can tweet things, but I have known people who are very good at sales and marketing. That is not my strength. People who can, go into, make deals with people who have magazines in the niche areas and write articles in that, and, like, go on a podcast tour talking about their product, and, like, all of those are very good ideas. They're things that I would like to get good at. It's not a strength I currently have. The strength I have is in like I can make a really good product. I can make a thing that can cost very little to get up and running. So why not use that strength as my way of marketing? If I made a thing that super fans could use for free. So Joe McGill loves the Bitcoin podcast network, and he really wants to make clips like this. He can go to my site for free, type in the name of the podcast, or automatically import it from YouTube or something, make his clip of it. The clip that he exports is going to be watermarked non-intrusively with "This was made with Clips.marketing," and he makes the clip of it. Him doing that cost me, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 cents. And now if he makes several clips of it, let's say when he does that, he has 3 clips that he did of this hour-long episode. And I let him do everything you can do on Clips.marketing. So if he wants to like hook up his Twitter account and automatically tweet it, if he wants to hook it up to his Facebook, whatever, you can use the whole product. The only thing is I watermark the videos, and if I'm automatically tweeting for you, I include a link to like this was made with Clips.marketing. Now what's happening is I'm effectively paying for marketing pennies at a time. For 5 cents of compute time for me, I have gotten this person to get this video out there that's an example of a video that you can make with Clips.marketing. He probably is tagging whoever the content creator was, saying like this is an idea from this person. Now that content creator is seeing like, oh, this is nice, and wow, this person put a lot of clips out here, and he did it very quickly. What is this Clips.marketing thing? Now the next time that they're thinking about this as a content strategy, the place where I would look as a content creator is like, oh, hey, haven't people been making videos that look like this that they've been tagging us in? How are they making those? I'm trying to solve this problem right now of how you make this sort of video. And then that's where it gets paid off, because, if I have one customer sign up because of that, that pays for what? I don't know, 1,000 people using it for free. What would that actually be? If I'm charging like nothing, if I'm charging $100 a month for my paid customers, and it costs something like 10 cents per clip, yeah, I can have 1,000 free customers supported by every paying customer. And those numbers were conservative by a factor of 10. What are your thoughts on that?
I have several thoughts. This is kind of how I thought the setup would go with Meeting Place, and so I made it freemium. I agree with all the things you said about freemium generally being a really bad idea for all the reasons that you talked about. So if I were going to do something like this, there are a lot of things I'd push back on. One is you say it costs 5 cents a clip, but that's without support. I guarantee you that you will have free people asking you for lots of support, just for the reasons that you said. Yeah. Also, I would say there's lots of assumptions about how good that marketing would be. And so I'd look at those assumptions. If I was going to do it, I would treat it as an experiment, and I would make sure that whatever experiment you run is time boxed. And so you're not offering free forever. I would do something like for, anyone who signs up on my mailing list before, the end of August or something, you will get, 3 months free in the beta program or something like that. That's one way to do it. So instead of free forever, it's 3 months free or something. Another way to do it might be, make something like an ambassador program or something. So these people who are not clipping their own content, but are just like super fans of other podcasts or YouTube videos, it's free for the people in the ambassador program. And that is like a heavily gated thing. Like you have to know an ambassador or know you or something to get into it, so it's more like a premium thing to get in, and it's free for them to use it on content that isn't there or something like that. So I would heavily box it either by number of people that come in or how long they can use it. In that way, you sort of mitigate a lot, and then basically run it as an experiment. So, for the 3 months that it's free, does anyone actually look at the content, the clips that people make? Does anyone actually go to your website? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I would say is it sounds like you're trying to sort of run away from marketing or sales by using this method. Yes. And I know you are, because that's exactly what I did too. Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is you got someone to pay $100 a month, presumably, like that. That's what I heard last time. So can you find 10 more of those people before you do freemium? If so, then don't do freemium. Find 10 more of those people. That's what I would say.
I am running away from marketing. Thank you for calling me out. Yes. And yeah, I found someone willing to pay me $100 a month that said on the call, you're selling me money, you should be charging me way more. And I get to pick my customers. So like, part of what I think I might be feeling is I don't want to throw away that third of people who are super fans who have signed up for this. I don't want to say no to people. And it's important to say no and set boundaries and be like, no, this is not a tool for you. This is a tool for people who pay me money. And I don't like you. Go away.
See, you're not saying that. What you're saying is, in order to make this viable, I need to create features and support people who are paying me money. The features that you're going to get from these superfan creators are different, I think, than the people who are actually paying you money. So the product will be different if you listen to them instead of the people who pay you. So
yeah, it will be. And then it's a less focused product. Okay. All right. I like what you said about time boxing it, that like don't make this a trapdoor decision. If I want to experiment with Freemium, do it in the context of that it's an experiment that's reversible. I like the way you're framing an ambassador program. This touches on another idea I had of a problem that I think content creators have is like they just want these clips to be made. They don't want to manage the person. They don't want to have to hire anyone. They want to send a check and the clips get made and they do nothing and the clips are going to be good. If I could connect the ambassadors with like the content creators, if you love the Tim Ferriss podcast and you would just clip things from him for fun, what if I said like, hey, what if you got paid $50 for every clip that you made? And then I go to Tim Ferriss and say, hey, would you pay $75 per clip when there's this other service charging you this much? And like maybe they won't be as high quality, but maybe they'll be higher quality because these are actual listeners of your podcast that are doing this, that love you, that like here's some examples of clips that they've already done. And then I just figure out some way of massaging that interaction. That feels like a better way to do this. Maybe if I'm more direct with like, if you want to use this tool to clip someone else's podcast, you don't have to be the one paying for it, but this does need to be more formal arrangement. You can't just do this for fun with like anything you come to. You need to be more directly generating me value. And then that's going to cut down on the number of people who want to do that, but that's good because I'd rather work with a smaller number of people. I'm one dude who's still about to hire his personal assistant. Oh, that's happening. Got pushed a little bit, but happening in October. So it is the biggest cost here is support, which I wasn't thinking about. Yeah. And if I had, 1,000 freemium customers, they're going to be asking for a different set of features that aren't going to be making them money. So I think it'd be easy to lose focus on like, what is the value actually driving this as a business forward? Okay. Good thoughts. Thank you. Okay. I think I've shifted my focus then to, it does make more sense to focus on, let's get another 10 people paying me $100 or more a month, and listen really closely to them of what are the things that they want that are driving more value forward. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
I say that because I've made all those mistakes before, and it's very easy to say and difficult to do. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
I feel like I've made several of those mistakes before too. Do I learn my lesson? No, I keep running away from marketing. I have one last thing I wanted to tell you about, which is kind of just like, I feel good. I made progress on this project. Midnight, my time tracker, designed to be a total time tracker. I track everything. I track bathroom breaks. I track how much I sleep. I track down to the second how much work I spend on each project. I made some very meaningful progress on that this last week. This was an older code base, and I needed to go through and switch everything up to this new infrastructure I have of like being deployed on Vercel and being written in Next. And there were some backend things that needed to happen that I did well, and I'm able to do routing now. And as part of that, okay, now that it's in this new framework, I was able to do reports much easier. So I finally have reports. I can see. I was previously like going through day by day and adding up. Okay, it was this much time on this day, and this much time on this day, and for the last week. Now I just go to a page, and it's a beautiful page that has the URL is very pretty and also reflects the date span. And I can see for last week I spent 1 hour and 21 minutes on makers.dev. And that's including recording time, which I'm very proud of. That was something I was working on for a while. On Attaboy, I spent 1 hour and 19 minutes. On administrative tasks, I spent 4 hours and 21 minutes. On Midnight, this time tracker, I spent 4 hours and 12 minutes. and on chatting with friends. That's another thing I was tracking. I spent 9 hours and 7 minutes. Feels like a good chunk of time being social, hanging out with people. So that feels good. I pushed it forward. It's cool. And I haven't picked this project up in a while, I think because I was very confused as to what the next step was. I was talking with my girlfriend Sarah about, like, do we market this to lawyers? Do we market it to, like, consultants? And that's not who I'm making this for. I'm making it for me and people who have this problem that I do of wanting to holistically better understand where you're investing time in your life. Elon Musk had a tweet recently along the lines of, like, time is the most valuable resource. And this is coming from a billionaire. Like, yeah, time is extremely limited. It's very expensive. It's very difficult to get back, and you have to be very intentional with it. And I want a second-by-second account of where I spend my time, because that's how I'm going to know how I want to change where the time is spent in the future. So this I feel like I've gained clarity in what this is and who it's for, which feels good. And I think it's going to make sense to start talking about this more, which might look like, I don't know, publishing on Twitter, like weekly summaries of what my time log went, how I spent my time. And I don't really have a pretty way to do that yet. I just have a table. I'd like a better visualization of like a tree map, like the Grand Perspective software does, showing you files, how big they are on your computer. Where does your mind go in talking about all this? Part of this is just like, thank you for getting me back on course. I mean, we were talking about this a few months ago of like, this is a thing for me, and I'm designing this for a market that I don't understand.
Yeah, we sort of, when we talked about this before, you talked about like consultants or lawyers or something, and all of their needs are sort of different than what you're designing for. I think at the time I compared it more to like maybe Nomad List or 4 Hour Workweek, like the groups around that, like people who are really interested in either, I mean, for Nomad List, it's like, traveling in a specific way, and it's not any one profession, but it's like people who have this really specific interest. So I think that's more kind of like what you would be doing with this. So yeah, I think it's neat. Excited to see where it goes. It would be interesting to see, if or how it could make money. I presumably that's your goal if you're trying to sell it to other people, or so. But yeah, I think it's neat. I think it's a good strategy to not focus on any particular, like, consultants or lawyers or something, but instead focus on people who really want second by second tracking of everything. I sort of see like I don't know if you want to do this, but I sort of see like a very expensive box that you open and you have your 10 little buttons that you put around your in a room, and then it comes with like some instructions about like how to do this whole setup, and it's like a like a whole experience to the tracking. That's sort of where my mind went, but I don't know if that's something you want to do at all. But yeah,
I like the idea of that. That'd be a cool experience to give to other people. Technically, it'd be very difficult because the buttons I have right now have a stupid amount of setup of you gotta copy and paste this thing and go to a specific area of the app. Like, to do that, I would need to be making my own buttons, which would be tricky. I don't know for people who just want to track their time second by second. I don't see this as a thing that I could charge more than like, I don't know, $20 a month for, which is kind of painful seeing things like Noco, the time tracker. If I just specialize a little bit more of, okay, no, this is for freelancers or this is for lawyers. Okay, now it's a $250 a month project.
Yeah.
But that's just not the audience I'm excited about. That's not like how I'm using it. This is it's like a life improvement thing. It's like if I'm going to charge more money for this, I think it might be in consulting. I think it might be in like, this is the physical tool and the software that gets you the data that then you can have a consultation with someone like Laura Vanderkam, or someone that she trains. Laura Vanderkam is an author who has written a lot about time tracking and the benefits of it. And she has a whole exercise that you go through of like, you track your time for the last week, and she just does it in a spreadsheet, 15 minutes at a time, which is perfectly functional. It doesn't like the advantage that you get from doing it second by second is like not that much. But what's useful for it for me is I've made the system so easy that it's just effortless for me to get a full accounting of my time. So maybe the full product is you get consulting. You have an hour-long call with someone, and it's a 6-week program or something. And the first week is just, let's get set up and let's practice getting good data, make sure we have all the buttons set up. And then the second week is like, okay, we have 2 weeks of data to look back on now. What would you like to be spending more time on? What would you like to be spending less time on? What surprised you from this? And those conversations feel like they could be templated really easily. That seems like the sort of thing that could be easily outsourced. And so now if it's a consulting thing, maybe I can offer the tool for a small amount of money, and then I'm just really pushing for, hey, if you'd like a time consultation, it's $100 per call. You can get the 6-week program with 1 call per week for, I don't know, $500. We'll give you $100 off. And there's this other bonus if you unlock this feature of the app. That's kind of where my mind is going. Does that seem reasonable? Is that an angle that's consistent with what I'm trying to do here?
Yeah, I mean, there's two different ways I could see this really going. One is exactly what you're talking about, super customized. $1,000 for this program that's really gonna redefine how you live your life or something. That feels like it's very hands-on for you and would require a lot of time and effort in producing it. Which maybe what you want to do. That's fine. The other way is to go way down market. You could still be an expensive time tracker, but be down market. But expensive time tracker would be like one-time fee of $29 for an app kind of thing, which is an expensive time tracker because most are like $1 right on the App Store. But I think you could probably make a case for like a $29 time tracker, especially if you, I don't know. So you said the buttons are really hard, but that I think like based on what you've been saying has kind of been part of what makes the experience so good for you, and so it might be worth figuring out how to integrate those buttons, even if the type of people who might do this might be people like you who are willing to spend a lot of time figuring out how to connect buttons to their app. So I don't know. I think there's a few different ways you could take it. I would talk to your customers. That is what I'll talk to your potential customers. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't want to. I
know.
Just want to stay in my cave and code.
If you just want to stay in your cave and code, then I would release an app on the App Store for $29 one-time fee, and then have lots of good testimonials and videos about how it works and stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, I should talk to my customers then. I had people using this, but I think they fell off because I never set up anyone with buttons. That's been like the key of this for me. And there's other ways to, like I have, a touch bar app that does it, and there's shortcuts on my phone that can also enter things. But the main, I feel like the main innovation here for me was like systematizing anything that I have more than a 25% chance of doing in a day. To enter that in the time log is just I push a button, or it happens automatically based on something that I do, or I tap an icon on my phone or on the touch bar. Really just like nailing those systems in place has been the thing that's gotten me to be able to keep such a rigorous log. So maybe it's a course. Maybe it's like a time tracking course that's $600. You can charge $600 for a course, and then I'm not okay, and then I'm not having to invest a bunch of time, but I can offer a very premium, like, okay, what amount of money would someone have to send me to get me to like do actual work? An in-person consultation is $1,000 after you've taken the course, but the course is going to answer most of your questions. I like that the most, I think, because a course I can walk someone through. I have my systematized thing. Okay, it's still a 6-week program, but it's systematized. And then if you want as an upsell after that, or if you want just from the very beginning, you just have so much money and you want individual attention from the beginning, you can pay for the more expensive course. Okay, and now it doesn't really matter that like a time tracker is a time tracker and this is a commodity, because this time tracker in particular is the one supported by the course, and it lets you do everything that you'll need to do in the course. And I guess if you want to, if you're already using a time tracker, you can use that too. The core product is this course, but there might be some things that you're doing in this that would be difficult. And if you really don't want to do any of the setup and you don't want to do the software, you could just get this done by having a spreadsheet. Okay, that's the angle here. That feels really good, because then a course is automated, that sells itself, and then I just figure out whatever, I would feel good doing like weekly office hours if I have like a hotline, people call in and I'll answer whatever their question is, and then take that content and repurpose it, and now I'm syndicating that, and now that's sort of built in marketing. Okay, I've got a plan. That feels good. Does the course resonate with you too? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I would still talk to customers to figure out, what price point and how you reach them and all of that stuff.
I know. Okay.
But yes, yeah. I think a course is more like what you want this to be.
Cool. That feels good. Talking to customers, man. When's the last time you talked to a customer?
I talked to Jesse about his...
You got me. All right.
But no, I do the same thing. It is hard. It's difficult, right? And I don't know why. I don't know why it's hard. But it is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Marie Poulin got me turned on to this idea of having office hours that like once a week at a set time, and you broadcast it across your entire base. You're just like, hey, if you show up and have a question, I'll answer it for you. And then you can take that video and everyone has access to it, whether or not they showed up for office hours. Then the people who have the most burning questions get their questions answered. You time box it of like, this is only an hour a week that I'm talking to people. I can talk to several people at once. They don't have to be on video if they don't want to. I'm looking for a system like that would just get me in the process of talking to people without, I don't know, having to schedule it one by one. That I just have this standing thing of like, any question you have, I could do it even like across products. I could just say like, if you're a customer of mine using anything I've made, show up at this time.
Right.
I will answer your question, and then after the fact, I can split it up into clips, and then have the clips go where they need to go on. If it's a question about the time tracker, it'll go on that. If it's a question about file inbox, it'll go on that Facebook page. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, even so, my master's program, you can email or you can ask questions on the forums, but the way you actually talk to people is show up to their office hours. Like they hold office hours twice a week, and if you want to talk to the professors or the TAs, then you have to show up for their office hours. So yeah, that's how you scale your time. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. That feels scaled in several respects too, because you could have 10 people show up to office hours, and now in an hour you've answered 10 people's questions
instead of scheduling 10 different calls.
Exactly.
And everything.
Yeah. And you sort of get to skip the formality of like, oh, hello, how are you?
Right.
How is the place that you're at? COVID, I know, right? So you're scaling in that respect, and then you're also scaling in like, the expectation is that this is office hours, it's being recorded. I don't have to ask permission to record this thing, so I can take a video of this and then scale it out. I really like this idea. That's starting to make a lot of sense, and that's a way to solve this problem of that talking to people is hard. And then I just broadcast on like every email list I have. If you want to ask me a question about anything, here's the form to do it in. That's kind of fun for me too, because then I can gauge like, I'm having a lot of people ask me about my coding class, and now I'm in the mode of talking about that. I could spend more time doing that. That might be confusing if you show up like wanting to ask me a question about file inbox, and then I'm answering questions about something totally different that you've never heard of. But I'll do it, and I'll figure it out, and if anything, I could spin something out into like, okay, this thing has its own separate office hours now that's at this time.
Right.
Okay, cool. That feels good.
Cool.
That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you not next week, but the week after. I'm going to Croatia.
Yeah.
Wish me luck.
If
the borders.
if the governments all let you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I might be calling you from a quarantine camp or something the next time we talk. All right. I'll see you when I see you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.